Thunderbolts, the latest MCU film, is now playing in theaters, and as a point of reference, I went from not really caring about this to being pretty damn excited by the time the release date rolled around, and somehow it ended up being the best MCU film since Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 around 2 years ago. Actually, now that I just said somehow, there isn't that much competition, I'm going to be honest. I thought this was awesome, though. A film so fun that it makes me want to say something stupid like, the MCU is back. Not only is this a wildly entertaining comic book film and an MCU film that actually gets you excited for the future of the franchise, but it's a genuinely mature and touching story on mental health, loneliness, and purpose, which I never could have predicted, judging off the trailers and everything. This film's a big, funny, and pretty over-the-top, specifically Red Guardian, superhero film, but the way it handled its themes of feeling so bored and so tired of your life after the mistakes you've made is something that I know many people can relate to. I never would have expected Thunderbolts to be as emotionally captivating as it was. There's a few specific scenes that I want to touch on, but like going fully in depth with them would go into spoiler territory, so I'll try to be as vague as possible. There's two conversations that Yelena has with Bob, and one conversation between Alexei and Yelena, his daughter, that really did end up hitting hard. As great as the other members of the team are, Yelena is the protagonist, the heart and soul of this movie. This movie is essentially just a Yelena Belova standalone movie at times. She's the one that goes through the biggest character arc. She gets the most exploration. It starts with her. It ends with her. I do think the final shot is her face. So, yeah, it does end with her. It starts with her face. Thunderbolts. This movie is at its best when the Thunderbolts, the team members, are actually bonding with one another and getting more familiar with one another. It reminded me a lot of the Avengers, which I guess it was trying to. It's always great when we're introduced to a new familial team in the MCU in this franchise. The Avengers were the first back in 2012. Then we have the Guardians of the Galaxy. Now we have the Thunderbolts. In a little bit, we're going to get the Fantastic Four, which they are legitimately an actual family. Visually, this thing is actually quite impressive, especially looking at Captain America Brave New World from earlier this year, which is just very, very bland in terms of how it looks. Deadpool and Wolverine has some really ugly sequences. The MCU is usually criticized for looking too gray, and I agree with a lot of those criticisms. And this movie looks gray, but like intentionally, stylistically, this movie looks gray. It feels as if there was an actual effort put into making this movie look good, which is unfortunately something we just don't get much from the MCU anymore, which is really disappointing. The humor, it hits. The humor, this movie's funny, specifically Red Guardian. David Harbour is so good in this role. He is easily the most entertaining aspect of this film. David Harbour is, I'm so excited to see more of this team, because, the ending said the Thunderbolts will return, and we got that Avengers Doomsday thing where we know these guys will return. Bob, the Sentry, he's the absolute GOAT, and the way the Thunderbolts get through the villain in this film is definitely not what most people are going to be expecting, but it actually worked for me. It felt natural, and it fit the rest of the movie. The Void's design and powers were showcased so well, and he was pretty terrifying. I'm excited to see him return in Doomsday, as I mentioned previously. As nervous as I am about that movie, that could be a total train wreck. I had the time of my life with this movie, I did, but it's definitely not perfect. Everything to do with Valentina's subplot was pretty damn rough for the majority of the film, specifically the first act, which was the weakest of the three acts in my opinion. Every time we cut to Valentina, it feels as if all the air was just released from the movie. Her and her sidekick character, I think her name is Mel or something like that, they were absurdly uninteresting and painfully bland characters. The relationship Bucky had with Mel was fine, but there were infinitely more interesting things going on and taking place that I could not care less. Sentry, I guess, is the antagonist of the movie that the protagonists have to overcome, but Val is the real villain here, so I just wish she was written better. I've heard a lot of people talk about how they love the first act, but think the third act falls off a little bit. I am the exact opposite. I thought the first half hour or so was very exposition heavy and just felt like any other MCU movie. It kind of felt generic. It was just a whole bunch of setup. It begins to, pick up when our characters actually, team up together and try to find their way out of. That is going to go into spoiler territory, but the third act is so surreal. It actually reminded me of a David Lynch movie at times, which I guess that's because I've been watching a lot of David Lynch movies recently. But like, it was one of the most creative things I've seen this franchise do in a while. It felt new, it felt different. Such a cool way to present a final battle with such a powerful character against what are essentially grounded anti-heroes. A lot of people were joking about how they were gonna, beat Sentry by doing something cliche, doing something stupid. I guess they do win using the power of friendship. Dude, you just have to see the movie. I'm not going to spoil anything, but I think it works. For the movie that this was, it works. Florence Pugh is great. David Harbour, as I mentioned before, is really awesome comedic relief. And Louis Pullman is maybe the biggest surprise performance of this movie. I really loved him. The post-credit scenes were fun, but considering how much hype they're getting currently, they were kind of underwhelming. The first one is a joke, and it works, and I laughed. The second one is a setup for Avengers Doomsday in the way that Thor Ragnarok sets up Avengers Infinity War. It felt like a post-Phase 3 MCU post-credit scene. I'm not exactly sure what I was expecting, but it just wasn't as exciting as I thought it would be. So, Thunderbolts. One of the better MCU movies of recent years, and I had a fantastic time with it.